our good friend Danny Kelly. You can follow Danny there on X at Danny B. Kelly. And I was thinking about this. We're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk Seahawks. We're going to talk fantasy football. You and I, 15 years ago, along with Scott Inyard on the Field Gulls podcast, we were ahead of our time. We should have just stopped doing what we were doing then and just went into that realm immediately, sir.
Yeah, do you think that our pod would be bigger than Bill Simmons' pod right now if we just was stuck with it?
I think we would be Bill Simmons. You wouldn't be working for Bill Simmons.
Yeah.
He'd be working for us.
Dang. If only. Yeah, but we were ahead of the curve on that one. Seahawks podcast. It was a 12th man podcast back in the day.
The 12th man podcast on Field Gulls, who and credit to Field Gulls, still around, still doing strong and doing great.
Doing great work.
Doing Seahawks content. Danny Kelly's going to join us every week here on Wednesdays around 11:15. If I can get Divish off the line, we're going to talk NFL. We're going to talk Seahawks. We're going to talk fantasy football. All of it, as I mentioned before on X, you can follow Danny there at Danny B. Kelly. It's all brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated. Manny and Roger, two diehard Huskies, my friends. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 25 years. Makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodie's Offa, and a host of your other favorite beers. Tap room is open from 10 to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Well, week one thoughts. Let's just jump right into it. What stood out to you week one of the National Football League?
Oh, man. You have to choose one thing?
You can choose as much as you want. Go through the laundry list of things.
Well, the Chiefs seem to be inevitable once again, I think was like the first thing. We got some really fun matchups, obviously. The 49ers also look a little bit inevitable. So the first two big picture things is that like two of the best teams from last year are still two of the best teams this year, even with some of the off-field and off-season drama. Something that's definitely more in my wheelhouse coming off the draft is that the rookie quarterbacks all look pretty awful. So I guess that was to be expected, but it was a little bit disappointing at the same time to see like Caleb Williams threw like 93 yards. Even though they won, it was obviously a tough first outing for him. But yeah, I would say, the good teams still look really good and the rookies looked really awful.
Do you think about the rookies? And they all did. I mean, I guess Jaden Daniels at times looked okay. He looked okay on the ground, right?
Yeah.
Jaden Daniels put up a lot of yards on the ground, but that was a blowout. And do you think week one jitters?
Yeah.
We would chalk it up to that, right? Not a misevaluation of the talented players.
I think there's this impression that everybody, or I guess like CJ Stroud set a really hard example to match last year because he came in and was pretty good, like right from the jump. But yeah, I mean, like if you look at the history of rookie quarterbacks in their first season, and even going back to like Russell Wilson's first year, I remember he lit up that preseason. We were so excited about what he could do once the regular season came around. Like he was running circles around defenses that preseason. Wow. And then he came in, and I believe his first game was against the Cardinals, and it was a struggle. It was a struggle, and I think that's just something that you have to expect with any of these young quarterbacks. Like the speed of the game is just so different. Teams are playing really vanilla stuff in the preseason, so once you get to the regular season, it's totally different. I do think, I think Caleb Williams is going to be fine. He flashed a few things that I thought were encouraging. Jaden Daniels, he was really poor as a passer, but again, like his ability to run around gives him a little bit of a dynamic thing on offense. So, I think those guys will be fine.
Yeah. Danny Kelly again with us from The Ringer as we talk all things NFL, Seahawks, and of course, so we'll get to some fantasy football. I'm going to need some fantasy football help as well. If people are in the YouTube chat, if you want a fantasy football question, get them loaded now, and I'll try to pick out the, I don't know, a handful of them, and you can ask Danny Kelly because this guy knows.
All right.
It's not you got fantasy football, overall NFL. He's got draft. He's got it all covered. Danny Kelly, follow him at Danny B. Kelly. I think the other thing that stood out to me, I think just of week one, you're right. Chiefs just look like the Chiefs. 49ers. I mean, for the fact that the 49ers looked like that, with Brandon Ayuk basically missing camp, with Christian McCaffrey not playing, and they just, here's Mason. Let's just plug him in, and he gets 150 yards.
Yeah.
It's just they look dominant
and
again.
their defense was still really good.
Yeah.
They not Joey Bosa, but Nick Bosa was just dominant off the edge. This is also Trent Williams didn't play all preseason either, and so
Right.
it's like they had awful offseason vibes. Like usually when you lose the Super Bowl, the vibes are gonna be kind of tough in the offseason, but they came out and just looked absolutely freaking dominant once again. So that's a little bit disconcerting if you're a Seahawks fan, because they just look really, really strong again. And not a lot of mistakes on offense. Like that game could have been an even bigger blowout because Ayuk dropped a touchdown. There was still a little bit of rust there, I think, but Purdy was efficient. The run game was dominant. This is against a good defense too in the Jets.
Yeah, and I'm just waiting. Like when I'm watching that game, and all I'm doing, and I think with every game when I get to the 49ers, Danny, is I'm just waiting for when is Brock Purdy just going to suck?
Yeah.
Like, when is it going to happen? When is he going to, when is the shoe going to drop? And then every time you watch him, he just makes good plays. I know he's a product of the system. I think every quarterback's a product of the system.
Yeah.
But, one thing about him, he just makes plays. He does. He's a good quarterback. He just, and I think for a lot of fans, maybe Seahawks more than any fan base, they just don't want to buy in that he's actually good. That he is. He's just good.
It took me a really long time to kind of admit that to myself. Probably like a year, honestly. It's just like, he has almost the best situation any quarterback has ever had. He has the best left tackle in the game. He has the best running back in the game. He has one of the best receivers in Brandon Ayuk, one of the best tight ends in George Kittle. He has a really good offensive line. He has one of the best play calling coaches we've ever seen in Kyle Shanahan. Like Kyle Shanahan, the way that he designs his offense, sequences his offense, the way that he marries the run. And by the way, his run game is really intricate and changes like a little bit every game to like make it really hard for the defense. So it's just like he was dropped into like one of the best situations imaginable. But like, look what happened with Trey Lance in that situation. Look what happened with multiple guys down the line, Jimmy G. And you just kind of have to admit it at this point that Brock Purdy runs that offense really, really well. He never seems to get rattled either, which is, I think, a really important thing at the quarterback position. He has a short memory. If he makes a bad mistake, he doesn't really tend to it doesn't tend to hurt later in the game. I don't know what he would look like in another offense, but he looks really good in this offense. And I think that's honestly like kind of all that matters right now.
And that's the thing. Like, what would Patrick Mahomes look like in a different offense, right?
Yeah,
If Patrick Mahomes wasn't selected where he was selected, and again, maybe there's no doubt that he's such a talented football player and quarterback that he would have found his way into stardom. But he went to the best situation. He didn't have to play right away, and he goes to a head coach who is an offensive mastermind.
Yep.
And just has utilized him perfectly to his strengths. So, I mean, I think all these guys, that's the one worry that I at least had going into the season with Caleb Williams. He's just going to look at his offensive coordinator.
Yeah.
It's Shane Waldron. I mean, it's terrible.
Doesn't inspire a lot of confidence.
No, remember from the Super Bowl, Jackson Smith and Jigba was asked the question by I think the Chicago radio host, and he just sat there and laughed and
he was like, "Are we live? Is this on the record?"
So I think that, and then you've got an uncertain situation, right, with the head coach there. Is he going to be the guy? And then we're going through it year 2 with Bryce Young.
Yep.
It's just you got to go to the right situation, and clearly where Purdy was selected, it was the right situation.
Makes all the difference. The supporting cast, the continuity among coaching staff is so important for these young guys. That is kind of one of my worries with Caleb Williams is like, if they don't end up winning, they ended up winning this game, which was kind of a miracle. They had a bunch of defensive and special teams plays that got them the win. But if they end up underwhelming and not really doing as well as I think a lot of people expect them to do this year, then, they could be looking at a new coach, new offense coordinator, new system. It's just that upheaval is always not very good for young quarterbacks. And so that is a worry. But at the same time, Williams is fortunate that he landed in a system that has DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Roma Dunze, unfortunately hurt his knee, but, he'll be around for the foreseeable future there. And so that's good. And this team has a pretty good defense. So all things considered, he landed in a pretty good situation. But I agree with you. The Shane Waldron, I was watching that game on Sunday. I was just like, man, I don't know if he's it. You know what I mean? Obviously, Caleb Williams missed some throws, and
Yeah.
he didn't play well at all. But I don't know. I'm a little worried about that.
Yeah. The other thing I take away from the Monday night game with the Niners and the Jets, I mean, I don't. He's off an Achilles injury.
Mhm.
It just he didn't look. He wasn't moving around all that well. He looked a little gun shy. I don't know. It doesn't seem like that whole Jets, Aaron Rodgers, Robert Saleh thing is really meshing, and that it's going to end bad. And like halfway through the season, I wouldn't be surprised as Robert Saleh is fired.
Yeah.
This doesn't look like it's going to work.
I mean, yeah, this is a team, and honestly, like, when was the last time the Jets had what seemed to be like a cohesive coaching, ownership, and quarterback situation? Like, it just hasn't happened for them for a really long time. Even when they were really good and like going to AFC championships and stuff, I feel like they were a chaotic team with Rex Ryan coaching and whatever. And so, yeah, it feels like we kind of projected a little bit too much what the Jets could be when you drop Aaron Rodgers in there, and you kind of forget, like, he's old, like he's coming off a major injury. There's going to be growing pains in this offense. He hasn't played in a long time. He hasn't played with these guys. He hasn't played with these receivers. Like, it's not a surprise to me that Alan Lazard, of all people, was their leading receiver. Six catches for 89 yards and 2 touchdowns. Alan Lazard. You want to know why? Because he's played with Aaron Rodgers before, and Aaron Rodgers has an improvisational style to him. He doesn't like running the play that gets called. He goes to the line, he checks out of it, he does his thing. He doesn't really play in rhythm or on time very much. Like, he's obviously very good at doing that, and playing off rhythm and off schedule, I guess. But, like, it takes a little time for everyone to come together with this. And so obviously it doesn't help playing one of the best defenses in the NFL either.
Yeah, I needed Garrett Wilson to have a few more yards. Be honest with you.
Yeah, me too.
Needed Garrett Wilson to be a little bit more of a focus there on the offense there for the Jets. And then, yeah, I just think it was a great theater of football. I mean, the thing is with Week 1, Danny, it's the greatest reality show that we have in just ever is the NFL. It just really is. I mean, think about the pregame on Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, in like with 5 minutes, you got and jump in if I miss something.
Just an all-timer Sunday. Yeah.
Dak Prescott's got a new deal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, which was the storyline that ESPN had. It was drooled over the entire offseason. It kept Get Up and Mike Greenberg alive. Was the Dallas Cowboys and Dak Prescott
just making fun of the Cowboys all offseason?
Yeah, and
never gets old.
So that gets done, and then what do we got? We got another Scotty Scheffler situation. This time it's an NFL player, and it's Tyreek Hill, who's getting pulled over for a traffic violation, ripped out of his car, and put in handcuffs. All of it's happening at once. It's just
Jeff Darlington again on the scene of the crime.
Darlington again. I mean, if I see Darlington, I'm getting out of my car.
Don't speed.
If
you're around Jeff Darlington.
And it's just all of that, and it was just remarkable. Just a remarkable theater. And then and then Thursday was a great game. It's the greatest theater in the world is the NFL.
Yeah, it never gets old. It's the NFL season for people that cover it is definitely kind of a grind, but like I was so excited for the football to start again. I work in the industry, but I'm also just like a huge fan. I just love watching football. It's so much fun. I love all these I love storylines, I love fantasy, all this stuff is great. And then, you got Russell Wilson getting hurt and Justin Fields coming in to play for him right away. He had the Brazil game, which was just wacky and wild, and great Week 1. A lot of fun storylines. Yeah, a lot of great storylines. All right, fantasy football, because that's going to be the other element of this segment here with Danny Kelly. I'll get to the chat room here on YouTube to see if we got any questions in there for Danny Kelly, and I'll peruse that. I'm going to start here with this. What's the running back situation in Miami? I have A-Chain, probably like a lot of other people. We already know that Mostert's out. Yep. A-Chain missed, I think, the first 2 days of practice, and I think he came back today. Yep. So should everyone run and get Jeff Wilson? I think, yes. Pick up Jeff Wilson for sure, just in case. I think Jalen Wright, if he is still out there, is worth grabbing just in case. It sounds like A-Chan is going to play. He was running around at the beat writers in Miami today. We're talking about how he looked pretty good moving around. The fact that he's at practice even if it's a limited situation, I think would indicate it's not like a high ankle sprain where it's going to, really hurt him long term. Maybe he just had sort of like he kind of limped off the field at the very end of the game there, and there was uncertainty about what happened. So the fact that he's at practice, moving around, there's some video of him jogging about and making cuts and things like that. It sounds like he's going to be okay, but I would guess there's a solid chance he is a little bit limited in terms of like how much they give him the football, how big of a role he's going to have in the game. So I wouldn't expect a full workload for him. I'm still probably going to be plugging him in to my lineups just because he is Devon Achane. He's like literally the most efficient runner we've seen since like Jamal Charles. So I'm probably still going to be, plugging him into my lineups just because he's that guy, but I wouldn't expect quite as big of a workload. He may not be quite as involved in the passing game. So just, there's a little bit of a risk there, especially with him playing on Thursday. But right now it's looking like he's going to play.
Okay. What do we do with if someone needs a quarterback, do you really say, God, I guess I'll get Malik Willis?
I would probably avoid that situation, to be honest. Like he does have the upside as being a runner, which in fantasy, as we saw with like Jane Daniels, is a huge cheat code. But everything we've seen with Willis so far is like he just takes a ton of sacks. It's going to be hard to envision this Packers offense getting much going. I probably, when it comes to their pass catchers, like the fact that Willis is going to be playing is a big tiebreaker for me. If I'm looking at starting, Jaden Reed versus someone else, I might just go with the other guy just because, this offense it really could struggle this week with Malik Willis starting. So I would probably avoid that. There's other guys out on the wire right now, like Baker Mayfield. I probably would lean him a little bit more.
Okay.
Going up against the Lions, they had a couple injuries. Their first round rookie got injured, I believe, this last game. So they still could be susceptible to giving up some passing yards. So I would probably go with a little bit more established quarterback position, even though Malik Willis could run around a bunch. He just has been so bad every time we've seen him play that I'd probably avoid that.
Who is the who is the guy right now that could still be available? Usually it's a rookie or some under the radar. There's always every year, whatever. It's usually a running back, under the radar guy right now that you have seen is still available that people can jump on and grab.
Well, I'd say Bucky Irving for the Buccaneers. If he's still out there, he might have gotten scooped up on the first waiver run already, but he is a guy who I really liked coming into the draft. And he has looked really good in both preseason. He had like 9 runs for 60-something yards on Sunday. They're using him. He's getting playing time. And so he's definitely a guy I would keep in mind in terms of just like if you want to stash him on your bench and kind of see how that all plays out. Rashad White hasn't exactly impressed as a runner. He's a very good pass catcher, but I think there's a chance that Bucky Irving gets like a little bit bigger role going forward. The other guy that I would keep in mind is Trey Benson for the Cardinals. He doesn't. He's more of a handcuff right now because they really like Connor, but Connor has a history of injuries. He's getting up there in age. I think he's like 28, 29 at this point. And again, they're putting a lot of volume on James Conner's back, and if he gets injured, a guy like Trey Benson could all of a sudden become very, very valuable. So. He's another guy to keep in mind.
Okay, a question from the YouTube chat room. Puka Nacua. Who do you replace Puka with?
I lean Demarcus Robinson. He's done it in the past. He did it last year. Every time he played last year, it was like every time he played over 70% of snaps, he was like making a real contribution. I would say he's a good route runner, a reliable guy. He has that established chemistry with Matt Stafford. But there are a couple other guys that could end up being a part of this offense. Tyler Johnson, who's another player I've liked kind of over the years. He's been a little bit of a journeyman, but really good college player, tons of production in college. And so he's another guy. And then Jordan Whittington, I should say, is a rookie that really impressed them in training camp and preseason. And so I think it's going to be a kind of a mix between Demarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Whittington, and then Tutu Atwell is still on the team. I don't know how that's going to all shake out, but to me, I'm going with Demarcus Robinson, who's already done this before in the past, kind of established. And I feel pretty comfortable if you're really in a pinch, plugging him as a flex because this offense is just Matt Stafford is going to sling the ball around.
Last thing for you, what did you make of the week one, the debut of Mike McDonald? I mean,
Yeah.
there's the first half reaction, and then there's going to be the second half reaction, and then I guess you put it all into one big pot, and then have an opinion on what you saw in week one, besides Marshawn giving him a massage on the sideline.
Love that. Love Marshawn just still hanging out, still in the still in the program. Just it's always great when like a fan favorite. Well, he's like honestly one of the top Seattle sports personalities of all time. Like he's up there, I think, with like Griffey and some of the like most beloved players in Seattle history
easily.
So I love that he's still just hanging around, and so that's great. But look, sometimes teams just have a DNA, and the Seahawks, it's a circus. It's always going to be a circus with this team for whatever reason. First freaking play of the offense is a pick by Geno. They give up 2 freaking safeties, which who does that? I don't remember the last time I've ever seen a team give 2 safeties in one quarter. Only the Seahawks could do that. But at the end of the day, despite all the circus antics that kind of just I think are ingrained in the Seahawks DNA, I'm very encouraged with what I saw. Generally speaking, the decision making I think by McDonald was really strong. He is definitely a very different style of coach on the sideline than Pete Carroll was.
Mm-hmm.
He's kind of just stoic and serious, and I think like his decision making, in-game decision making, the way he calls the defense, I was very encouraged with all of that. And obviously like coming in and kind of dominating in the second half for the most part. Obviously they kind of let it get a little bit close there in the end, but the way they closed out the game, I was impressed with it. And overall, great first game. Still very, optimistic about what he can do.
Yeah. There he is, Danny Kelly. He's going to join us every single week to talk all things NFL, Seahawks, and, of course, fantasy football. My segment, talking all things NFL and fantasy football, is brought to you by Georgetown Brewery, locally owned and operated by 2 diehard Huskies. Their names are Manny and Roger. Big thanks to those guys, although they're not friendly this week because it's Apple Cup week. They've been pouring the best local craft beer for the past 23 years, makers of Manny's Pale Ale, Bodhisattva IPA, and a host of your other favorite beers. The tap room is open 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. 7 days a week. Visit them at georgetownbeer.com. Danny Kelly, again, will join us every Wednesday around 11:15. You can, if you missed it, you can catch it, the replay back up on YouTube. Listen to it, Apple, Spotify, wherever you find your podcast, and, of course, up at pucksports.com. Danny, you're the best. Appreciate you doing it. I'm glad that we're back together. Look forward to our visits throughout the NFL season.
Absolutely.
And, we'll talk to you next week.
Feels great to be reunited. And I love your hat. I think I'm going to have to buy one of those.
Go get it. I think Simply Seattle has this.
Okay. I'm going to look that up right now.
Okay.
Also, by the way, Bodhisattva in my fridge right now. Love that beer. That's a Kelly family staple.
Next week, I know it's early. Crack it open.
Okay. I'll do that. Yeah.
Let's just do it.
11 o'clock on a Tuesday or Wednesday? Why not?
11 o'clock on a Tuesday. Let's share a Bodie next week. All right?
All right.
So, there he is, Danny B. Kelly, again, every Wednesday at around 11:15 that he will join us.